I guess as a little background, when talking about like we kind of have to define life in order to answer this question, because life as we know it uh, in every organism on Earth today is very complicated. It involves DNA as your kind of information, your blueprint to make up you. Involves proteins, and those are the things that kind of carry out all the functions in the body and in every organism. And it involves RNA, which is kind of this, it's kind of like DNA. It's also an information molecule, but it has the purpose in life today of copying down the blueprint from DNA and sending it over to the ribosome, and then the ribosome translates this into protein so that you can have all these functions occurring in the body. So that's kind of the background of life as we know it. But we don't think that that system, DNA, RNA, and proteins, and this complicated genetic code just kind of happened out of the blue. Like it's too complicated. And in Darwinian evolution, we kind of think about intermediate stages where you can have some sort of intermediate system which is good but not as good as the end product. So we think that first life wasn't DNA, RNA, and proteins, but we think it was just RNA. So it just simplified down to this one molecule, which is an information molecule. So it can be a blueprint, but it can also fold on itself and be like a protein. It can have behaviors that are like proteins. So it's kind of this intermediate in evolution where it's not quite as good as the system we have now, but it's a lot more easy to figure out how to go from simple organics that could be delivered to the early Earth by, say, meteorites or produced maybe in the atmosphere, all the way to RNA. That kind of process is a lot more easy to try and figure out chemically than getting to life as we know it, which is just so much more complex. So that's the background. So we're trying to get to RNA. When we're talking about the origin of life, we're actually talking about the origin of RNA, which can reproduce, which can replicate itself by, if you can imagine, just an information molecule with these four different bases. It's A, G, C, and U, but you could think of it as just like one, two, three, and four. These are four numbers, and you can put them in a sequence, and that's a unique piece of information that can be copied. So this RNA can copy itself, and the two hypotheses for figuring out how to get to RNA, how to get to first life on Earth, are either in a warm little pond, and this is something that actually Darwin came up with back in the 1800s, and crazy that it's still something that's very relevant and very likely today. And then the other is hydrothermal vents at the ocean floor, two very, very contrasting environments, one on the surface within fresh water and one at the ocean floor in salt water. And these two hypotheses have kind of very different ways of going about this problem.